So Diana, you want to share what's going on there at your house? Since I think you got kicked off.
Yeah, sorry. I live where the internet is not very good, as my son says. So I feel my experience in life is, in general, it's like, as a mother of a young son, that sometimes I'm weeks behind, like what other people can do. And so I have.
Whoops, there's Frozen. That's that mother scream sometimes. I'm going to suggest, Diane, I don't know if you can hear me yet, but I'm going to suggest that you might have to do some of the class with the video off. You might have a better stability that way. Sometimes that works. That's that instability. So we'll see when she comes back. So
it kind of reminded me of sometimes the teenagers when you turn your back and go.
Yeah, that's right. How true, how true. Oh my gosh. She would be probably appalled to have to see that. So let's get back to TAG basic level 1 session. You know, this very similar process in the TAG session is what you've been doing with the blueprint. What's really, really important is your presence. So that statement, I am a presence of. What are you a presence of? What are you holding the core for? I'm a presence of integrity. I'm a presence of commitment. I am committed to the highest good for all in the web of life. I am committed to wisdom and honesty. What are you a stand for? What are you going to be a presence of? And then it's up to you to notice when you're not that, because you won't be that all the time. Sometimes you'll be just relaxed, but sometimes you'll be maybe angry, and that's not quite the same either. So in the protocol that I use in keeping yourself in that state of presence that you claim is good mind from the Iroquois nations. Meaning, I'm a presence of, this is what I'm claiming. Now, in that claiming, you're also saying, and those who I work with in the spiritual realm have these qualities. You're in alignment, they're in alignment with you. That creates boundaries. It creates resonance, who you're going to attract. So that's really an important piece. When you are feeling off, then it's up to you to, when you're ready, and sometimes, it's nice to be in that really angry state for a while. You can be there for as long as you want to be, whatever. But when you're ready, then what tools do you have to get yourself back into balance? And you each have some. There'll be some in the tag work. The disc creation that we used last week is a good one. Tag and transform in behalf of yourself is a good one. Deep 6 for yourself. Are you of my light? Are all good ones from the tags work. And you'll have your own breath work, maybe some movement. Maybe you find walking in the forest. Maybe you find doing some dance. So when in the Iroquois Nation, when anyone is out of good mind, they withdraw from whatever discussion, even if it's a council meeting, they withdraw and say, I'm not in good mind. They withdraw. Everybody respects that, not good nor bad. And they do what they need to do to get themselves back into good mind. That's really an important part of you as a tag facilitator, that you are committed to a type of energy pillar. And then you're going to, with within the tag, it's like I'm connected to the tag. There's a team, I call it the Tag Healing Collective. Used to be the tag team. They were the ones who helped put these processes together, new information. But it soon became clear that other processes were really important. That's that integrated approach. Other processes were really important. And so in the spiritual world, those who initiated the idea or even helped create the idea, who may now be in the spiritual world, there are others who also have valuable healing protocols and practices. And so they're all collectively connected in this, what I call the Tag Healing Collective. So it's not exclusive for tag work. So the Healing Collective, and you have secure channels into that team. You might even say, and I want a member of that tag collective to be on my specific team. You know, you can design groups that work with you in specific areas of your life. You don't have to, I mean, we all have a causal team that we brought together as we made the decision to incarnate in the seventh world. That was beings we trusted, and they came together and they helped us design our birth plan. That's the causal team. I call it the causal team, because the causal chakra is like control central. You check out the plan before you incarnate, at the causal chakra. And they come in with you, so that they're with you from the beginning, whether you know it or not, and they're available to you, but personal choice is in play. They will not take over your life, but they're part of your team. Now that you're waking up, they're part too. In tag, it's not necessary for you to move out of your body to travel to different regions. In tag, you can stay very grounded on the planet. The tag work also, one of the criteria for me is that it was necessary that our work, this work, although it is done in the frequencies of light, that it make a noticeable difference in the scene. We work in the unseen to make changes in the scene. So if you are making changes in the unseen that aren't showing up in the scene, then there's something out of whack. There's something more in the way. And I know in the 90s, it was very common for gurus to be like put on pedestals, and they live their life like SHIT. Oh, but we're doing spiritual shit. You know, we're doing spiritual adultery. That's, no, not with tag. We make changes in the unseen so that the scene changes. If it doesn't change, it's not that the work isn't good. It's like, what's the next thing? What is there more to do? Okay. So your preparation, your space preparation, and Arlie talked about how she did a space preparation. That's important. And your teams of integrity are there with you, and that's important. You all probably know or have heard of Barbara Marx Hubbard. And when she said, I was an agnostic Jew, and she was told to go to a meditation monastery in California that was Christian. And she spent a week there studying New Testament and came to the conclusion, like, oh my gosh, with tears in her eyes, this is the way we should be living. We should be living in this loving place. I get it. And they said, okay, then that's what you ought to be teaching. She said, I don't know how. What? Do you know how? I don't know how, with tears running down her face. I don't know how. And what she heard was, you choose. We'll show you how to do. We know the do. We know the steps. So you choose. The same thing here. You're going to be working with teams who can be in the 7th dimension, in the 8th world. They can be down up in the 1st world. They can bring you information from all over the place by you staying grounded and open and listening. So I'm going to shift over to a share screen and kind of do what I'm going to go through So here's my sheet of paper. And if I'm doing, it's very similar to what I would do in person, but most of my work is online now. Okay. And I do the session itself offline. I think, Jalen, because, I have more flexibility. I can, there's a lot of information and a lot, so I do all of my work offline and give feedback in the record Zoom when I'm doing a tag session, doing the recording on Zoom after the fact. Okay. So of course, the first thing I do is the name on a piece of paper and date. Now, I used to think I should save all of everything I've done and save the papers, et cetera, file it. And it was no. Once it's done, it's done. I mean, once I finish a session and I finish the session, it goes deep. And then I don't even remember it until I pull the paper out again to do the feedback for the client. That once that's done, what I do, I give them their support, whatever they need, and I have a website for them. But after the session is done and turned over to them, I literally take the paper and crumple it, and I have a place where I burn those sacred papers. So that's the way I finish the session. Okay, I do not save the papers. It was no purpose in it. They've changed or they haven't. When they come again, that's where you start. And so it did no good in my estimation to go back and refer to papers. So I don't. And then because I'm visual, I triple cocoon. And you don't have to do this. You can just do it by command and put the hazmat suit around. I just do that. Okay. Now we have a conversation. And when I do online, I have people, I use Calendly so they can schedule time for the feedback session. And on that Calendly, there is a place where I will say to them what 1 or 2 issues or blockages or patterns, what is it that you are wanting to deal with? And usually that's enough. You could, if you wanted to, have a 15-20 minute conversation with them ahead of time. And that's where you would do what I would when they're there in person with me. That's when I say to them, what do you notice? What's going on? Let them tell me there are 1 or 2 issues. In a basic session, there's only going to be 1 or 2 issues. We're not going to go across the total package. And so they'll tell me. And so they'll say, well, this is an issue. And this is an issue. I've got, I'm having constantly pains in XYZ. And this is a pattern that keeps repeating. So that's what they bring to the table in some fashion. If I'm doing it in person, I've welcomed them. I've let them tell me what it is they're dealing with. Make a note of that. And then what I do, if we're working in person, I say to them, well, let me explain how, my model of energy, and I use the spiral. And this is where most people work. And I talk about body, mind, spirit, because that's what most people understand. But what I began to notice is there were other things going on, something was trapping us. And I asked to know what, which took me to these worlds. So where most healing practices will address in this 8 dimension of body, mind, spirit, which is helpful. In TAG, we work with 64 dimensions, which allows us to go deeper and have more permanent, healing. We don't stay in cycles because this is where things began. I might be that simple in my explanation to them. When I am doing it on Zoom, again, most is all done just to the Calendly. This is, I want to schedule a time. This is when I have, and these are the issues I'm dealing with. So that's all they've given me at that point. So we don't go into this part yet. So they've given me a name. I triple cocoon it, put it in a hazmat suit. And then what I do when I know what their issues are, I literally create an ice cube. To freeze frame those patterns. These manifestations, these are manifesting from some cause, correct? These are not showing up out of the blue. If it is in their life, it is in their field. That's the law of manifestation. They're coming to you because they're in discomfort or pain of some kind. So that cause has manifested into these specific symptoms or issues. And I can say to the whole energy of this pain, I'm here, I've got it, I'll look into it, I'll get the message, you can stop screaming. So I do that. And often I just put down freeze frame. Now, if I'm doing Calendly, if it's an online and I have all this information, as soon as they've scheduled, I do this, and I created a page. I've created a page for them that I'm going to be working on, but I want to immediately have all of these. I want them protected. I want their messages to slow down or to stop, because it might be anywhere from 4 days to 2 weeks before we're going to get together. So I do this immediately when I'm doing online. So I think that's pretty simple. Any questions about that? Going to share screen. Again, this is just, let's see where I get, there it is.
I have a little question.
Okay, Jaylyn.
I really liked the idea of getting together and doing the whole thing with them present,
Yes.
but online.
Yes. Yes.
That's because so then I wouldn't know any of those things until we met.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Then you would treat it like I would treat an in-person if they're coming to my studio, right? They're coming. I don't know. Sometimes I know who sent them, but I don't know much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sitting like you would. We would be sitting, them in a chair and me in a chair. I'm gonna, welcome them. What is it they're noticing, and of course, this is the model. Here's their situation. What are you noticing that's uncomfortable, or that you find you want to deal with? Because this is why they're coming. And all of these seeds are where it's coming from, right? So that's where you give them a chance to say what it is that they're noticing. And that's where I would then talk to them about, and the dimensions. Here's the 8 dimensions. Most people understand energy work within the body, mind, spirit. And the only additional thing, you don't have to go into a detail about the galactic worlds. You can just say that because the cycles of pain, the cycles that we have been trapped in, we're addressing because of the galactic worlds that we have access to, which is where a lot where everything started, really, because that's where it started. So the ability to go not just in the 8 dimensions, because we can work there, but also what might be happening to you in the galactic worlds, which is, I'll be working in 64 dimensions. And that's usually enough. So, and then that's when I answer any questions, let them go to the bathroom, and of course, put them on the table. And it might be the same thing that once you do that little introductory, or even though you're on Zoom, and do the little introductory, depending on how long that takes, you may want to say, do you need a couple of minutes? Because now we're going to go into maybe a 30-minute stretch. And of course, when I'm doing it in person, I definitely give them the option to, take a bathroom break so that they can do it if they need to. Okay, so these are kind of the nuts and bolts of things, okay? Here is a picture you'll get, and let's see, here we are. Because this is really more of what it looks like. Here's their symptoms or the issues. Something in their life has triggered it. And I have a communication box because there is always an interaction. It might be male to male, it might be female to female, it might be male to female. There's an interaction. There have been times when my client's interaction was with some off-being presence, but mostly not. The one I'm thinking of happened many years ago, where her guide stepped in and gave her a download, but it was so overwhelming, it left her unbalanced. But she didn't know why she was up here feeling stress. But instead, so what we look at in the first tag session is the symptoms, 1 or 2. And that's what you're going to know to work with. And that's what you put into an ice cube. Freeze frame that in any way you want to. You don't have to do it visually. You can just do it by request. Now, what is going to be helpful and what you're going to learn and practice is, how do you identify a trigger? Because the trigger holds the component of the reason that they feel unbalanced. So we're going to go a different direction here. Okay, so here is the color chart. You see that? Because there is an interaction of some kind. I'm going to go back to this one, keep this one up, but I'm going to do a share screen here too. And I'm going to clear that out. And this is going to, I'm putting together a booklet for this. So you'll be looking at it, and then let's see, where did I put my marker? Here it is. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the pendulum. So I know that my client is female. This is all shorthand stuff. So then I use my pendulum and say, is the other person, the trigger who she interacted with, was it in a male or female body? And you just use your pendulum. Is it a male body? No. Then it must be a female body. Yes. Okay. The interaction then was between 2 females. Again, if you want to develop to be able to see the situation and then write it down, you could. I do it this way because I want to get things done more quickly. So I call it shorthand. So my client is female. She's interacting with a female. I often say, how long ago did it happen? You don't have to do that initially, but eventually you can find out, okay, it happened 6 weeks ago. It's, remember, the the stick that breaks the elephant's back, the last thing. So there's a buildup that happens, and then this is the tipping point. The trigger is like the tipping point that activated something in the storage system. So this is the trigger. So then I use my pendulum to use the color chart. And I make notes of it here. So the first question is, what did my client sense or feel from the other? And I find that out with color. We'll go into that in a minute. How did she react? And find that out. And what was she left with? Now that's a trigger. Something happened in the current life, in current day, a pattern and interaction that triggered old storage that will lead you then to deeper work. So I'm going to stop this. So I'm just going to ask my team to make something up. So we're working with female to female interaction. And so they're saying yes. And what did this client, this makeup client, experience from the other woman? And they're saying muddy indigo. Oh, no, they're saying indigo. I'm sorry. Indigo. That's what they're showing me. Indigo, which is really rare. I hardly ever get indigo. I hardly ever get purple. I hardly ever get red. So then I want to know, is that clear? Yes, clear indigo. Because what would be the opposite? It would be muddy. It would be unbalanced. But no, clear indigo. Oh, I know what they're doing. Clear indigo. And you'll have a color chart for this. Clear indigo is like feeling really secure in your connections to home. It's not intuition. It's more like a real solid sense of home. So my suspicion here is that what they're using that idea that it's a spiritual guide that triggered, and they're saying yes, they're using that. So what she felt was clear indigo, which is like a really rush of home energy. So I would just put on my chart C/I. That's how I would shorthand it. C/I. That's what she felt. And I'm just going to do this so that, and then we'll look at it later. C/I. Now, how did she react? That's the question now. How did she react? And you see, it's just standing static. It shut her down. No action, no energy, shut down. So I say, not NA, not available. She was shut down as a reaction. And then what was she left with? Again, what's the color? What was she left with? And they're doing, so this is orange. And is it muddy? Yes, a muddy orange. And so muddy orange would be a sense of hopelessness or powerlessness. It could be control, manipulation, but I don't think it's that. So muddy. So she was left with muddy orange. And I would ask them, does that mean, did she feel controlled? Did she feel manipulated? No. But she felt like hopeless. No, powerless. So here's this, and this doesn't happen often, but it's something like this did happen. So she had some kind of energy, and it may not even been a presence in form. It might have been an energy of home, of good, but it was so overwhelming that it just shut down her system. And instead of leaving her inspired, she felt powerless because of systems that had been shut down. So now she's come to me probably to say, I can hardly function. Now, the reason it's there's value in knowing what the trigger is. We're gonna now then go back and say, where did it come from? Why did this overwhelm cause her systems to shut down and leave her powerless rather than inspired? Are you with me? Any questions? So now we have what the client is feeling. We're having the trigger that caused that feeling. And she's on the table in that meditative place doing her quiet thing. You are totally being a secretary to the team. So this is where we go back in and say, okay, what we need to do then is now I need to know where that began. And that's when you will use a process. I call it time travel. Some of you have used it and experienced it before, and we won't have time to go through it today, but we will take time. And that's when, and I'm going to give you kind of the bare bones of that process. So we're able to say to that trigger situation, I'm hearing you. Do you see I'm working with you? And again, but that's not enough. We want to say, why did that happen? And so that's when we literally, if your client, if you feel to have your client travel with you, you can, and now you would take them on the guided journey, or you can keep them lying in their quiet place and then you take the journey in their behalf. And the journey is something like this. Okay, now you're going to sit because they're on the table. They're in their quiet place. Now you're going to sit. You're going to know what you're doing. You're going to go into a meditative kind of quiet. Okay, bring in your travel teams. We're going to go to where this began. Why this experience? And you go back to the count of 3. And show me what is going on. I want to see my client in that lifetime. How is she feeling? What's going on around her? And you're writing all this down. And I don't see, I get words, you might get symbols, you know, this is part of that development that some of you already have, and some of you are going to be adding it to your toolbox. So if we go back in time, if I were to just tell you what I'm sensing or being here, going back in time to a place, there she is, she's with other women in circle, and they're interacting in joy and in love and in harmony. They meet regularly. Their village is doing great. And then the invader phase comes into their space. So they have this amazing, wonderful, filled with love. And the invaders show up. And the invaders now go after the women. And because they are so visible, because they are just, they're not aware that the software program, the plug, if you will, the wiring, literally the wiring that allows them to activate the authority connection in the solar plexus, the Sophia center, is unplugged. That instead of speaking to off-planet beings to have those invaders removed, they're speaking to their men, they're speaking to elected authorities, they're speaking this way where there's no power. They have had that plug wiring unplugged. And so this circle of women gets decimated. And so her experience is do not be filled with light. Do not let yourself be seen in your spiritual power. Because if you do, you'll be killed. That's the concept she's taken away. That's the concept that you then will work in that past village, calling the women together and doing the correction. For most corrections I'm finding now in my clients always is going to take me back to the Sophia. There, it used to be that we'd have them reframe, but that's old survival stuff. It's not about reframing, thinking differently. It's about literally getting that Sophia center activated in that circle with those women, so that then we can walk, then we let the invaders come and we stand with them and we say, not acceptable here. And literally the invaders are then removed in that lifetime. So damage never happens, you see. Then you can come forward to this part of herself that shut herself down and say, you did what you had to do. That part of herself that says, whoa, overwhelm of light, shut down. That was perfect. Thank you for doing that for her. You've kept her protected. And do you see that now, in this time, we have the wiring corrected. And so we release you to the light. And we replace, we keep your soul partner here is totally safe. It's not that we're leaving her unprotected. She now has that power within herself and connections with off-planet beings that will keep her safe. So we release then that aspect that triggered. And the healing has happened in the past. We brought the healing forward to the present. Now in a tag session, then what we're doing now is just downloading the evolutionary blueprint. Just let it get in there. Let it get started. Check the chakras to make sure the chakras are active as they are supposed to be, the basic 15. Sit and listen. Is there any information that I need to give to my client? Is there anything that her team wants me to give them? You can be as open with that if that's not what you want to do. Like there are some things I will not ask my team for in behalf of my client. I'm not going to tell them where to move. I'm not going to tell them when they're going to meet their one and only. I'm not going to get into that kind of material. So you can decide, and truly what you're going to tell them then, and then you're going to write a reality statement for them to anchor the change. My life, my family, my creations are all under the guidance and protection of my Sophia center of power, something like that. So that when you then come back and bring them back, they're present with you, and you can say to them, what was your experience? And let them say their experience. You don't have to interpret that for them. That's their experience. And then, now I'll tell you what I found. I found that you had an experience with some spiritual download or in presence 7 weeks ago that was very powerful but overwhelming to you, and it left you kind of like shut down and not knowing what to do because of this experience in the past when you were with a circle of women and they were joyful and they were doing wonderful things, and those beings of control and domination we call invaders came into the village and decimated that circle. You from that point on said, I will not show my light. I will not show my light. So when this light downloaded, it triggered that old decision, shut you down. And what we've done, and then you go through what you've done, how she can anchor it, answer questions. That would be a basic tag session. So we're getting back on track. So we'll be working with those things probably for the next couple of times, and then we'll start working with each other with others. So we have still a bunch ahead before we finish this 3 months. When we're finished with the 3 months, there'll be a month before I do level 2, but we'll have questions and answers. We'll have a couple of meetings during that month, because I want you to keep practicing, but I want you to have a place to come to ask questions. Okay, anything you want to say as before we close? That was kind of a lot, but we'll unpack it as we go in the next few weeks. Open the floor. Arlie, I see you there.
So we're going to get downloads from you, I take it, when you put the video up?
Well, what I'm finding, because of the download and the ebook and all the things, I mean, it's taken a lot more time because of the EV to get that done. And
Okay.
I did the same class on Monday, and I thought I would have that download to them probably by today. It's almost finished. The ebook and all the information is almost finished. So I don't think it might be ready by the time the video's up tomorrow. I will hope so, but if not, by Friday.
Okay, whenever, just
Yeah.
so long as it's going to be.
Yeah, it's gonna, yeah, there'll be a hard copy. Yeah.
Now, the next thing is I am having trouble with my pendulum again.
Mhm.
What can I do?
Ask. Pendulum, what are you trying to tell me? What is it that, what is it that you're telling me through not working correctly? And then listen.
I suppose that sounds much more productive than swearing at it, so I will try that.
It's like I said, sometimes, you get into the snit space, be in the snit space as much as you want, long as you want to, but then when you're ready to get out of that snit anger space, then pull out your tools. But I would, that's what I would say, ask. And who would you ask? Hey,
Casualty.
yep. What's going on here? There's a message here for me, and I need to know what it is, because I'm expanding my capacity and I'm safe. So what is it this about?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for the examples, because I was clicking channels yesterday and one came up on UFOs and stuff.
Mhm.
And I knew it triggered things in me
Ah,
that I wasn't completely sure. And as you went through it, I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
And I
Good.
went to a junk show this weekend and I didn't find a pendulum that called to me. So I'm still using my paperclip.
Okay. I'm still using my Fila dough. I love them. So that's what I've got.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. That was awesome.
Okay. So,
Sorry, Marlantha.
Right.
okay.
Yeah, I have a question. So you try to identify the trigger, and what if it's a person, someone close to their life? How would you tell your client to interact with this person, avoid them, or what do we do with that trigger?
I wouldn't, in this basic session, I would take the message, because that person is giving them a message of something. And when the message is gotten, you don't know, that person may all of a sudden change their way of being. So it's not about that other person, really, not at this point. It's about what are they to learn because that person's in their life. What you can say, however, is that keep the people, keep yourself and those individuals in your life, whoever you feel, to keep them in a triple cocoon, or you could just say keep them in a guardian circle. Guardian circle is probably what I would say to my clients, because it's easy, it's understandable, and it's very powerful. It's sufficient for what they're doing. Now, so part of the takeaway would be the reality statement. Realize we are not just healing, we are teaching. So part of the takeaway would be a reality statement and how to use the shift. keep yourself, I mean, it's going to be, energy's going to be shifting a little bit. So keep yourself in a guardian circle energy for yourself, your home, your land, and for the people in your life. And that's, and anything that feels uncomfortable or out of, or that feels like it's a situation you don't want, if it comes up, just deep six, use the command deep six to say calm the energy. That's all they need to know. Something very simple. So those would probably be the takeaways at a basic. This reality statement, guardian circles, deep six. And then say, now walk with that and see, because you've only begun. You've only begun. And for some people, it will be sufficient because they don't have much storage. They didn't bring much in. That might be sufficient. But for those who brought in more, then they'll want more. They'll need more from you. And that's why we go into level 2 and level 3. So that's where I would go. I wouldn't with level 1. I wouldn't go into the definitions and the contracts that we might go into in level 2. So that's why I would just say, keep everybody cocooned in a guardian circle. And I would have handouts, and you'll have those that you could email. Here's a basic guardian circle. Here's a basic reality shift, so that you can send them to your client when you're doing that work. Okay. 7 down, 8 next week. Thanks, loves. Have a really good rest of the day, and we'll see you when we see you again. Bye, loves.
Sounds good.
And here goes the voice of off recording.